Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is my review of the KGM R556. Not long ago, I did a review on their R30 from KGM, and this is the 556 variant, which is for a general purpose hard use suppressor, which are two things that I do quite a bit. I generally use suppressors, and when I do, I use them very hard. I've been impressed with KGM's attention to detail, their manufacturing, their design, and their kind of departure from what we see from some of the other suppressor companies. There's only so many ways you can make a suppressor, a silencer, if you will. So any kind of new innovation is always interesting to me, but also treated with some kind of suspicion, because gimmicks have existed in the past and they will certainly exist in the future. But it wasn't something I was expecting from KGM. Because I've had such good experiences with their products in the past, it is a little bit harder, but still very possible, to be objective going into a review. So what are we talking about with the R556? It's a just over 16-ounce suppressor that's just under 6 inches in length with a diameter of 1.5. 1.5 for 556 is a little bit scary for some people. They want a little bit of a beefier can. You see some 1.6s, some 1.7s, even some 1.8s out there. It is 556, obviously 223, and any caliber in accordance with that is going to fit. And I've got a nitride hardened stainless steel suppressor with this kind of the same baffle design we see on the R30. Now that baffle design is a multi-chamber, of course, as most suppressors are, with a focus on gas flow. So it's not the trademarked or copyrighted flow-through type design or helical feed or some of the other methods to approach this, but it is taking a look at more of the traditional baffle stack and giving more of a priority to the flow of the gas ultimately out of the suppressor versus as much gas coming back into the firearm, which is going to vary from operating system to operating system. DI versus piston. Like a bolt gun obviously is going to behave a lot differently, or a direct blowback, or roller lock, or straight blowback. So the operating system obviously plays a factor in the way the gas relationship works. It also has a very similar cap to what we saw on the R30, which on the R30, the APEC adjustable port end cap is non-removable, but it is timeable. Remember, it had those little hex screw threads that we could, or little nuts that we could put in there and kind of time where the gas was going to exit through that circumference of ports. On the R556, I have those same ports, but I don't have the cool little threaded holes that I can put the little screws in, which was kind of like, oh, I wanted those. That being said, I was curious going into 2,000 round reviews. One, is that going to change my recoil relationship? Is it going to change the gas behavior? And is it going to significantly change the muzzle flash? Because on 556 cans, especially the shorter can or the shorter diameter, smaller diameter, I guess I should say, I'm going to get that volume buildup that we see. And this isn't a huge concern for most suppressors, but there are some suppressors out there that are terrible at it. If I'm shooting a string of fire, say 4 or 5 rounds, first round I may get a louder pop, especially if the gun's already cold. First round pop is something you hear mentioned a lot when we talk about suppressors. But then I build up gas volume in the suppressor. So third or fourth round I might have a sudden explosion of gas pressure, unburnt powder, all the other relationships that cause muzzle flash. And that's a concern I have with a lot of suppressors. Is it going to be remarkable? Is it going to be noticeable? Is this suppressor going to behave differently from other suppressors in the size category? Is this? For mounting, I've got a ratcheting system, which was another concern going into this, because I've had ratcheting suppressors in the past fail me, where eventually the teeth wore out, or I would have a little bit of play in the final connection. The muzzle device that comes with a flash hider for 556, went ahead and mounted that on a couple different guns throughout the review process. So I put it on my Brand 2. I also mounted on a Sons of Liberty Gunworks M76, and I put it on my Roscoe Purebred SPR rifle build for more long-range precision work. It got the lion's share of the time spent on the Sons of Liberty gun because that was going to rerun pretty hard. And this is a hard use can, so I was going to use it hard. Muzzle device is actually really excellent. Sometimes muzzle devices, because with suppressors, you're almost always going to get a proprietary muzzle device. And there's some exceptions to that we're starting to see more recently. But historically, everybody made their own muzzle device for their suppressor, and it was a little bit aggravating if you're going to buy a couple different brands of suppressor, because you had to change out muzzle devices or grab whole different rifles, so you don't have to change muzzle devices. I like their flash hider a lot. It's very compact, and it's kind of a taper mount, but then the ratchet engages. And once this thing locks down, it's locked down. And then you can run it as hard as, say, somebody like me would, and it comes right off. And that's just a wonderful thing. Those of you who own suppressors know exactly what I'm talking about. You can run it, you can let it cool down, you can throw it in the safe, go back to the range, need to remove the can for some reason, came right off. It was amazing. And not unique, but not as common as it should be. And there's a fine line between user, I guess, removability, if you will, and tolerance issues. So running on a couple different guns, a couple different operating systems. So I'm using a piston gun and then 2 variations of DI. No issues as far as mounting, interface, lockup, it coming loose, it staying on too tight, carbon locking, anything like that. So as far as the mounting interface goes, I like it a lot. It's very simplistic. I was going to find out later, of course, if it was going to dramatically affect accuracy for return to point of aim, if you will. But the first 500 rounds I spent entirely on my Bren. Then I removed it from the Bren. While on the Bren, it performed great. In fact, as far as the Bren 2 is concerned, and this particular operating system, that piston gun, this is that gun's favorite suppressor. I don't think I've ever felt the recoil as smooth on my Bren, which is not a very violent gun to begin with when it comes to recoil, as it was with the R556. So this pretty much just became the R556. This can is going to live on that gun for most of the time, and pretty much any time I'm going to shoot it, I'm going to be shooting it with this on it. That was awesome. After that first 5 rounds of the whole get to know you, checking out the overall performance, went ahead and mounted it on my Sons of Liberty in M476 and did the 500 round burn down. If you're not familiar with the burn down, it's 500 rounds as quickly as possible to see if that accelerated rate of fire will identify any issues that I wouldn't notice with the same round count over a much longer period of time. So 3 or 4 minutes versus 3 or 4 hours, weeks, months, days. You guys know the boilerplate. Here's your burn down. Forbidden popsicle. 500 rounds, excellent performance, first to last round. Can did not come loose, didn't have any loosening issues. To my ear, the tone did not change first to last round. And even getting it super hot, getting that daytime, if you can see a can glowing in the daytime, you know it's warm. Did get a little bit of that forbidden popsicle action going on. Removed it, checked out the baffles, everything looked good. Mounting system was still rock solid. I did kind of, and it started to notice that with the Bren, I started to discolor the center of the finish because most of the suppressor heat takes place in those first couple baffles, and then as you go further down the suppressor, it doesn't affect the finish, if it's going to affect the finish, or the coating, or the metal, quite as much. So the can is definitely discolored now. This, of course, I'm holding it up. This is 2,000 rounds, but even after that 1,000 rounds, the first 500 rounds on the Brandon and the 500 round burn down, I was getting some discoloration. So already I would probably be like, yeah, nitrite's cool. And for some people, I don't mind it at all, but some people are going to mind it. Maybe offering a Cerakote option would be cool. But for me, not something I need. I don't really care what the can looks like, as long as it works. After the burn down, just kept it going. Another 500 rounds on my Sons of Liberty Guns Works M476. Did a lot of work with it at night, and I'd done some with it previous to that on the Bren as well, just checking out that muzzle flash. There is a muzzle signature to this suppressor, which is not super surprising, especially if you're going to be mounting it on SBRs like I am. You're gonna, shorter barrel usually equals more muzzle flash, just because more unburnt powder. The muzzle signature is not really, to me, like, I know it's there. I'm not going to say it's not noticeable, because it is. It's a fireball, but it's a very small, very subtle, very supple fireball. And it did not impede my sight picture, which to me is the most important thing about muzzle flash. I don't care about it if it doesn't impede my sight picture. And some people may say, well, what if it gives away precision? Check this out. If it doesn't impede my sight picture, it's probably not bright enough to significantly give away position any more than the sound of the gun will. And of course, arguments can be made about that, but I've had guns in the past, suppressed and unsuppressed, that occasionally would have fireballs that literally made me stop shooting because the target briefly disappeared. And that's just not cool. So if I can shoot through my muzzle flash, or if my muzzle flash isn't so significant, it dissipates before my sight picture settles anyway, which is most muzzle flash, it doesn't really bother me. I do get a volume buildup, and occasionally every couple of rounds I do get a little bit of a pop, depending on how hot the gun is, the ambient temperature. I mean, time of day is a factor. Obviously, in bright sunlight, I don't notice muzzle flash nearly as much as I do shooting at night. And I notice it more shooting at night as my light starts to build up carbon and I'm losing lumens and candela. I'll notice the muzzle flash a little bit more. But the R556 muzzle flash, when it does happen, is completely reasonable. It's almost like a little poof versus some kind of angry fireball. So I like that a lot. I also put it on my Roscoe purebred rifle, which is well, I consider it to be an SPR, special purpose rifle. It's a very accurate AR. Probably the most accurate AR I currently own. It's consistently a sub-MOA gun. The asterisk on that, of course, is you can change the accuracy of any rifle with a suppressor. You can make it worse, or you can make it better. I've had suppressors take 1 MOA guns and make them 4 MOA guns. So when we're doing a suppressor review, I go with a known quantity when I check accuracy for suppressor relationship. Anytime I'm going to do a review on a suppressor, rifle suppressors mostly, I'm going to do an accuracy check. And most of the time it's going to make it into the video, even though if it's not remarkable, I don't feel like I should have to put it in. But I'm putting it in because people are going to ask. One, they want to know if there's a zero shift suppressed, unsuppressed. Spoiler alert, yes, there's going to be. That's almost unavoidable. How bad is it going to be? We'll find out based on the suppressor, but also the rifle plays a factor in that. So I just choose a rifle I know to be accurate. So if the suppressor affects the actual accuracy of the firearm, we can talk about that. Zero shift, point of aim shift, return to zero shift, shift from suppressed versus unsuppressed, that's going to be unique to the rifle suppressor relationship almost all of the time. The R556 mounting it on this rifle shot a 5-round group. On this gun is zeroed 77 grain Atlanta Arms TMK. So here is after I got it zeroed for the gun, here's a 5-round group I fired at the zero distance of 100 yards. Then I removed the suppressor and fired another 5-round group to see if there was going to be a shift between suppressed and unsuppressed. I expected the shift. That's not a bad shift. It's not obviously point aim, point of impact, but suppressed, unsuppressed is going to change boil and impact. It's consistent. It's still maintaining a pretty good degree of accuracy, suppressed, unsuppressed. Now, the real question that a lot of people are going to ask, especially people who are focusing more for suppressed use for precision rifles, is do I have a return to zero? So I went ahead and put the suppressor back on the gun, fired another 5-round group, same zero distance, 100 yards, to see if I had a return to zero. I'm happy with that. For my purposes, that's a return to zero. The gun was a little bit warmer, so obviously that's going to be a factor, but it's really hard for me to nitpick those shot groups. Even when comparing all 3 shot groups, suppressed, unsuppressed, suppressed, I'm very happy with the overall performance of the rifle. It's all in the same very tight specificity of point of impact, which is something I definitely appreciate. So the R556 did not dramatically affect the accuracy performance of the rifle. Did it improve it? This is already a really accurate barrel, so it's hard to say if that suppressor made that group any tighter than it was going to be anyway. And as you saw 2 suppressed groups, 1 unsuppressed group, so you kind of have an idea of the inherent accuracy of this firearm anyway. The Roscoe purebred barrels, 416R stainless, they provide a great deal of consistent accuracy. That's why usually if I'm testing accuracy on a 5.56 suppressor, this is the rifle I'm going to put it on. Final verdict. When it comes to 5.56 specific suppressors, I have a favorite. I think I got a new one. If I'm going multi-cal, it's a different conversation. But I really like this can. I would like to see variations of it. I think slightly longer would be cooler, because I'd love to throw an R556 like L, I guess maybe is what they could call it. Add 2 or 3 baffles to it, and I'll throw it on every precision 556 SPR type rifle I have. The muzzle devices, the easy removal, the overall diameter, the materials, the performance, because we're looking at 2,000 rounds of really hard use. In fact, the only time I slowed down was there towards the end when I mounted it on the SPR, and that was like for about 200 rounds-ish. So the rest of the time I was just running the hell out of this can, not on purpose, just that's what I was doing, you know, working into my normal practice like I usually do, and also doing things, of course, like the burn down. But I was doing a lot of low light stuff too, and just everything all factored. There was a class involved, you know, doing a rifle class, ran the R556 in that. Everything went well. This is a really good suppressor. If you already have a 556 dedicated can, like you got like a Yankee Hill or a Surefire or something like that, it may not appreciate it as much, or you may not need it. But if you're just getting into, if you're one of the guys like most people do when they first buy their first suppressor, they're like, I'll just get one suppressor. I'll get a 30 cal suppressor so it shoots all the calibers under that. I'll only ever need that. And then you shoot your 30 cal suppressor on your 556 and you're like, yeah, that's cool and all, but I want it to sound better. In order to get it to sound better, you got to go caliber specific most of the time. Or if you're just one of those people that like, hey, you're like, this can's getting kind of old, looking for new technology, new performance, or you just want a new suppressor, and that's your God-given right to go ahead and do that. I like this suppressor a lot. I'd like to see what they do on the muzzle device side of things, if they offer anything beside the flash hider. I'm perfectly happy with the flash hider, but on SBRs I would also like to have a brake option, so I have more of a sacrificial baffle type thing going on there. I think this is, I don't necessarily want to use the word innovation, but the baffle relationship inside the suppressor for the diameter, for the weight that I'm getting, and the fact that it wasn't finicky on the guns that I put it on, I feel like their baffle design is specifically intelligent. I wouldn't say necessarily they're innovating, because that's a dangerous and a very loaded word when it comes to firearms related stuff, but I'm super impressed with the overall performance, and this is definitely a suppressor I'm going to keep using. Is it my favorite? Right now, it definitely is. Can that change? Yeah, of course it can. Maybe they'll produce a better suppressor, or somebody else will produce a better suppressor, because that's how things work. But for the overall performance, for the price point, for what you're getting, for what you're going to use it for your intended purpose, this is an excellent suppressor. And I'm expecting more good things in the future out of KGM. I'm Eric Count with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.